Okay, good. I will be talking to you about promises, what they are, and why you should use them to write better JavaScript. JavaScript is single-threaded, and it's highly asynchronous. So it's used to talk to APIs, to respond to user events. There are input-output operations on the server, and so on. For a long time, to write asynchronous code has been to use events and callbacks. A callback is a function that's passed into another function. So when this other function executes, it can call the callback function, and the code execution continues. This is made possible because functions in JavaScript are first-class citizens. And actually, this is a very, very powerful mechanism of writing asynchronous code. But with any more complex applications, these callbacks can lead to something known as a callback hell, where we have functions within functions, so callbacks within callbacks. And this can lower down the readability. You lose flow of the program. So this is where promises step in. Promises represent a placeholder for a value that will be available now, sometime in the future, or maybe never. They are an alternative for writing simpler asynchronous code. A very important feature is that they can be chained. We will look at that later. And they handle errors in a similar fashion to synchronous try-catch. How this looks in code. So a promise object takes a function that takes in two functions, a resolve and a reject function. If the inner function is valid, it should resolve with some data. Otherwise, it should reject with a reason. To consume the newly created promise, you call a then function that takes in a function with the result. So if the promise resolves with the data, the then is called. You then chain a catch method with a function that's called if the promise rejects and receives the error. Another way to write this is to pass in two functions to the then. So the first one is called if the promise resolves. The second one if the promise rejects. The first way is a better way because you can chain the then methods and have the catch be the last one. So it catches all the errors that happen in the previous promises, in the previous promise chain. And so this leads to something like a chaining heaven, where you would chain the thens and have a catch at the end, and you have much more readable code that's not nested like in the callback hell. The methods that are available are so the resolve, which returns a resolved promise with some data, a reject that returns a rejected promise with an error. Then there is the promise all that takes in an array of promises, and it either rejects or resolves when all the promises from the array reject or resolve. And the last one is the race, which is not that useful. It basically rejects or resolves. It also takes an array of promises and rejects or resolves when any one of them is the first one to reject or resolve. And that's not very useful. So it's not recommended. So the states, when a promise is created, it's in a pending state. If it resolves with some data, it's in a fulfilled state, or rejects with an error, it's in a rejected state. These two are the settled states. And then upon returning, we again have a promise, and then we can have the chaining behavior. So again, pending, and then again, resolve or reject, and so on. About the usage, so it's finally available natively in the ES6 standard, but it has been around for many years with libraries such as Q, When, and RSVP. They all share a common behavior that's known under the promises A+. For example, it defines that there should be a then method. The browser compatibility is pretty good at 75%. So it's available in Edge, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Opera. In IE, it's not available. And otherwise, so if it's not available, there is a polyfill that's a subset of features from the RSVP library, actually. What's next? So in the evolution of promises is the Asyncwait. That's part of the so-called DS 2017 standard. It brings an even easier way to read and write asynchronous code in a kind of synchronous manner. It's not that widely available, so only in Chrome beta, Firefox nightly, Edge with a flag, and Safari, it's still in development. But it can be transpiled. This is what it looks like. So a function that has the await keyword should have the async, so it should be annotated with the async. And basically, the code execution would, the code block would stop at the await keyword. In this case, the get data returns a promise. So this uses promises underneath. And so the chaining heaven that we had before with await and async would look like an await paradise, where we have the await, and for catching errors, it uses a try catch. To conclude, so promises allow to write much cleaner and simpler asynchronous code. They're finally available natively, and you should use them. They are well supported by the community. And here are some links for further reading, which you can check out later on the available slides. And that would be all. Thank you. Is everything clear? Are there any questions?
Come on, guys. There must be questions. Okay, here is a guy who totally doesn't work for Infinum.
Thank you, Bank, for a wonderful presentation. I have a question about promise all.
Yes.
You said it takes in an array of promises.
Yes.
Can I take something else? So, like a simple value?
I'm not sure, but yes, it can because it's JavaScript. Okay, and then I think it should be then resolved. It should act like a resolved promise. Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
You? Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.